Newly endorsed Labor leader Anthony Albanese is speaking for the first time in that position.
I'm honoured and very proud to be elected the 21st leader of the Australian Labor Party. I understand the responsibility that I've been given. A responsibility not just to the party and its supporters, but to our nation. I have been elected to lead, but I pledge to always remember that we are also here to serve all Australians. I've always seen Labor as more than a party. We are a movement for a better Australia. I want to see a larger, more inclusive party. And the first thing I want to say to all those millions of Australians who are disappointed with our performance and outcome on Saturday night, join up, get involved, make us stronger for the next challenge. I want to reach out also to those who didn't support Labor last Saturday, whether they're working people, whether they're small and family businesses, whether they're young or old, regardless of where they live. 1 in 4 Australians, I note, didn't vote for either of the potential governments on Saturday, either the Coalition or Labor. Those 25% of people are people who, in my view, both of, and I've said this consistently, both of the potential government parties in this nation need to acknowledge that there's a weakness in the system when the level of the vote is that high. I want to reiterate my congratulations to Scott Morrison on his election as Prime Minister. I say to him that I will hold his government to account, strongly, forcefully. I am a values politician, but I also say this to Scott Morrison. I'm not Tony Abbott. People want solutions, not arguments. They have conflict fatigue. Some reforms require bipartisan support. Our nation is diminished by not recognising first Australians in our Constitution, and while Indigenous Australians are the most disadvantaged in our nation. Labor stands ready to cooperate on how we advance the agenda of the Uluru Statement. I said before that I was a values politician. I am a progressive. I believe that government has a role in ensuring that change is in the interests of the majority of Australians. I'm an economist by training. At university, I studied the full spectrum of economic thought, as I've always believed that you had to understand and respect different perspectives. That's why, even in government, I was one of the few people who talked to people who I had fundamental disagreements with in the media. I've always believed in engaging and learning each and every day. I believe in a strong economy. I support job creation as the core value that governments have to achieve. Our 27 years of uninterrupted economic growth began with Labor reforms, and I had a very good discussion with Paul Keating yesterday. We avoided recession in 2009 under Labor. It didn't happen by accident. It happened because the people in that government, including Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan, made the right decisions. When it comes to debt to GDP, the fact is that the Coalition has given us the 4 worst years on record. We face circumstances whereby economic growth, wages and living standards are all under pressure. The international economy is very fragile. The economy must work for people, not the other way around. I view unions and business as having common interests. The key to growing the economy is investing in infrastructure and investing in people through education and skills. We have enormous opportunities. We're located in the part of the world that is seeing the fastest economic growth, not just in recent times in human history in the Indo-Pacific Asian region. That presents an opportunity for us. I believe in practical outcomes. If you look at what I've actually done in government and what I've argued in opposition, the creation of Infrastructure Australia, the aviation reforms that took aviation in this country from a position where it was very vulnerable into a position of strength, the national broadband network, local government infrastructure, building community-based infrastructure based upon local priorities right throughout the nation, urban policy and engagement in our cities, regional economic development, including my ongoing and what will be continuous advocacy for high-speed rail down the east coast of this country. On my watch, there was more investment in public transport in 6 years than occurred in the previous 107 years between Federation and the election of the Rudd government. But as Billy Bragg said, not everything that counts can be counted. And we shouldn't judge the economy as if it's separate from the people who the economy is meant to serve. So I believe very much in an inclusive society, one that looks after the most vulnerable. We must promote opportunity regardless of where people live, their gender, their ethnic background, their age, their faith, or who they love. Social justice must be a practical objective, not just a slogan. We can begin by committing as a nation to dealing with the scourge of domestic violence against women. So it's not, in my view, economic or social policy. It's both, hand in hand. And that's where aspiration comes in. I get aspiration. My life has turned out much better than anyone who looks at its humble beginnings could have possibly predicted. That is in part thanks to Labor reforms and policies. People do aspire for a better life. But in the land of the fair go, they aspire to more than things for themselves. They aspire to a better life for their family, for their friends, for their local community and for their nation. There is indeed such a thing as society, and we all depend on it. They also aspire for their kids to enjoy a better natural environment than the one that we enjoy today. And let me say this unequivocally, the science is in, climate change is real, we must act, not just as a nation but as a global community. Action will create jobs, it will benefit our economy and it will benefit our environment. And the business community say that. They are crying out for certainty. And it's time that the government worked with the opposition to deliver that certainty going into the future. So I am neither a climate sceptic nor am I a market sceptic when it comes to action on climate change, because I have listened to business and sat down with them. But the time for the ongoing conflict over these issues surely is over. Can I make some personal comments? No one gets to this position by themselves. On Saturday, I visited my mum's grave at Rookwood Catholic Cemetery to commemorate the 17th anniversary of her passing. She lived for all of her 65 years in the same council house in Camperdown, where she was born. She had a tough life. She made a brave decision in 1963 to keep a child and care for me as a single mother. I owe her everything. To my partner of 30 years, Carmel Abbott, I thank you for your love, your support and your advice over all those years. Our relationship has changed, but I have nothing but best wishes for her future. We have raised a wonderful young son in Nathan. He's now studying business at university. We couldn't be more proud. I'm sorry that my father figure in my life, Tom Uren, is not here today. I reckon he'd be pretty proud. To those who have mentored me over the years, people like Anne Simons, Bruce Childs, Jeanette McHugh, John Faulkner and many others. Some surprising people who taught me about the value of moving on from past conflicts. Leo McClay is a mate of mine. I wouldn't have expected that given our early interaction. The truth is that many people in the party across the spectrum, not just the party, the caucus, party members and unions have been so supportive of me personally over such a long period of time. I thank you sincerely for your support, your advice, your faith, and I will continue to rely upon you into the future. I understand that it is a big mountain that we have to climb. There are only 3 Labor leaders who've led government, Labor into government from opposition since the Second World War. They are, of course, Gough Whitlam, Bob Hawke and Kevin Rudd. To the great Gough, I pay tribute to you. To Bob Hawke, he gave me the great honour of being the guest speaker at the 20th anniversary of my election to Parliament. He also gave me the tremendous honour of launching Karen Middleton's biography of me in 2016. I'll miss Bob. Great company and tremendous advice, and I think is a model for what's best about Labor in government. One of the things that I've said about our experience of the Rudd and Gillard governments, Julia and Kevin remain very close friends of mine, and I've spoken to them in recent days. I think both those governments will be recorded well by history. But because we weren't long-term governments, then some of the reforms that we put in place weren't entrenched, unlike the reforms of the Hawke and Keating governments, such as Medicare and superannuation and so many of those dramatic changes which were made. I intend to put Labor in a position where I think we should be. I do believe Labor should be the natural party of government in this country. We stand for the vast majority of interests in this country. I want to pay tribute to Bill Shorten. No one could have worked harder to put Labor back in a government than Bill Shorten. As a former Labor leader, he will remain in an honoured position in our party, and I have been pleased to have conversations with him over recent days as well. To his deputy, Tanya Plibersek, a remarkable politician and a friend of mine for a very long period of time. To Tanya, whoever is elected deputy leader of the Labor Party on Thursday at the caucus meeting, I can only hope that they're as hard-working, as diligent and as loyal to me and to the whole show as you have been, and you have my respect. In my political activity up to this point, I have concentrated in recent times over the last decade on infrastructure, on building railways, roads, bridges, airports. Now, as leader of the Labor Party, I want to build something else. I want to build relationships between the Labor Party and those people who voted for us, but also those people who wanted to vote for us, who were open to vote for us, but who felt like they couldn't. I want to build bridges with people in regions and suburbs. I want to build relationships with people across the spectrum. I do say, for those of you up front in the media who'll be clamouring for instant what's the program in March 2022, which is when I expect the election to be at the latest, I intend to hasten slowly. There are many lessons we need to learn from Saturday's outcome. One of them is that the election isn't determined 6 months beforehand. even 3 months beforehand, perhaps even some might say a month beforehand. It's elected by putting together a program to take us into government. And I intend to be a consultative leader. I intend to hasten slowly when it comes to policy development. And you will have to be patient because, as we've all seen, there's a lot of concentration in recent times about what the next fortnight poll is. Perhaps there'll be a bit less now, and I'd recommend that very much to both people who are activists in politics and those who are observers of politics. I agree with Prime Minister Morrison that this is indeed a great country. The difference we have is I think it can be much, much better, and I believe that a Labor government can make it better. When people look at my engagement, I think one of the things that I hope they continue to say about me, and the challenge for me, because it's easy to take a lot of advice from others, and I will do that. But I also intend to live by the dictum that I've said a number of times. What you see is what you get. I do have strong values. I do have strong ideas. That doesn't mean that they're not open to change. Because the truth is, when facts change, you should change, and you should always be open to engagement. I'm open to engagement. There's been some commentary recently that somehow the idea that I would reach out to business as well as the union movement somehow is a change. If that's the case, you haven't been paying attention. Have a look at the Infrastructure Australia model. Have a look at what I did in government. Have a look at speeches I've given since we've been in opposition, including the Chifley lectures, Button oration, the Whitlam oration. I've been pretty consistent in my views over my time in politics. This is an incredible honour. It's not one that I anticipated. I only ever thought of running for the leadership of the Labor Party in 2013. Growing up where I did, my mum used to say to me in terms of aspiration, get a good job. And I started work in the Commonwealth Bank the Monday after I finished my last HSC exam. And she said, make sure you own your own house. And I think that's one of the things that I believe the country needs to address, the issue of housing affordability. So I will work very hard. For those who've said this is a daunting task, I say this. At the end of our period in government, I was Deputy Prime Minister. I was Leader of the government in the House of Representatives. I was Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. I was Minister for Communications and the Digital Economy. I'm up for a hard job. I'm up for hard work. I'm heartened and empowered by the support I have received from caucus colleagues, from party members, from union affiliates and from people who've contacted me saying that they didn't vote Labor last Saturday, but they're open to voting Labor next time round. I intend to ensure that they do, and I intend to do my best to work with the Australian people to ensure that we elect a Labor government next time. Thanks very much.
Mr Albanese, can you guarantee a 50-50 representation in Labor's leadership roles?
Look, the issue of representation is, of course, up to the caucus, but I will make my views very strongly known to the caucus, and we are working through those issues. I'm a strong supporter of women's representation, and I believe that in Penny Wong we have an outstanding person as leader of the Labor Party in the Senate, and those issues will be worked through.
Could there be changes in the Senate as a result of that?
Those issues will be worked through. The caucus is meeting on Thursday. One of the things that I will do is respect the caucus. I'll say this about the role that I've played since last Saturday night. I come to this position having done no deals, no arrangements. I have put myself forward on my merits, and I've received the support, not just of the party but of the caucus as well. A clear majority of the caucus, and a support from the party. Of course, that was never tested, but anyone who thinks this has been uncontested hasn't been paying any attention at all. So I will continue to work respectfully through the processes of the caucus. I intend to give every respect to the caucus, because let me say this: if you look at our side of politics and compare it with those who will sit on the government benches, whoever serves on our front bench, I will take that team every day compared with those opposite. The truth is that the government has lost an enormous amount of talent in Julie Bishop, in Christopher Pyne, in now, might I say, Mitch Fifield and Arthur Sinodinos, who I think it does augur very badly for the government, because I think that for Prime Minister Morrison to give 2 jobs for the boys out at his first press conference announcing the ministry is hubris and is arrogant, and I think it will be seen as such. And I also think it's a great mistake to lose talent, particularly Arthur Sinodinos is a friend of mine. One of the things about me is I have, I think, a range of friends on the other side of politics. And due to the fact of representing an area including Marrickville, which is seen as the great Greek heartland of Sydney, we've attended many events together. I wish Arthur well. This is not a reflection on him nor a reflection on Mitch Fifield. But I think when people elected the government on Saturday, they didn't give them a blank cheque, and they didn't say, on top of all the jobs that were handed out in the lead up to the election, where you had a record number of appointments to boards, to every politician who'd ever served or ever spoken to someone in the government seemingly got an appointment in the lead up to the election. I thought that was unwise, and I think that this show of arrogance is unwise as well.
Mr Albanese, you said that you want to build relationships with people who didn't vote Labor and that you support job creation. Do you support the Adani coal mine?
Well, look, we will go through, in terms of our processes, all of those issues. But the truth is that the Adani coal mine has been approved at the federal level by the EPBC Act. It's been approved not just once, it's been approved twice. It is going through Queensland government approvals. And then there is the other issue with regard to Adani, and indeed to the whole issue of the Galilee coal basin, is the issue of the economics of it, the basic cost-benefit ratios.